Thank you for tuning in to the Voice of the Victim podcast. We discuss a lot of sad and potentially triggering things on this show. We try to be as sensitive and cautious as possible, but if you are sensitive to things involving abuse and may be triggered, please think twice before listening to our show.
Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast. My name's Ryan.
And I'm Rosie.
How are you doing this week, Rosie?
I'm really sore.
Oh, yeah. You started a new adventure.
I am working out. My boss got a Peloton, really fancy bike machine, and has urged me to give it a shot. So I've been doing it once a day. Well, no, twice to 3 times a day.
Really?
Well, cycling once and then yoga classes for the rest. But
So obviously, this is the only way you'd ever be able to use a Peloton because there's a very high bar of entry.
But it's super cool because she made me a profile and now I have the app on my phone and I can do it at home. Wow, has it changed my life.
How much experience have you had in the past with exercise?
Zip. I hate exercising, but for some reason I've been feeling like super good about it. So
Well, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Really happy for you.
Thank you.
And it's been encouraging to me. I also ran today, so feeling good about that.
Come on, guys. 2021's just around the corner. Let's look good.
Well, I got a long way to go on that front, but I'm excited for the benefits that it will give us mentally.
I felt so good today.
Because-
Now I'm tired, but
Yeah, because who can't use a little bit of extra happiness?
Endorphins, man.
Yeah, endorphins. That's what I'm trying to think of right now. Anyway, before we start, we want to thank our 2 new patrons this week. Courtney, thank you.
Thank you, Courtney.
And let us know when you launch your podcast. We'll take a listen. Also, Leah.
Thank you,
Thank
Leah.
you so much, Leah. We appreciate you guys.
Always exciting to get a few new patrons.
Yeah, it is.
Very, very thankful and appreciative of you guys.
Yeah, very much so. And we hope you guys enjoyed the extra episodes. Do you want to read the review before we start, Rosie?
Sure. It says, "Hi guys, I am a true crime fan. I'm sorry, I want to re-say this.
Do they like your mispronunciations?
It says, "Hi guys, I am a true crime fan and really love what you are doing for all the victims in your stories. I used to be obsessed with understanding the offender, but now I'm loving the victim stories thanks to your podcast. Love hearing the cats in the background too. At first I thought it was my own. Keep up the good work, Deb."
Thank you so much, Deb.
Really sweet.
We have heard that like dogs will freak out if they hear our cats in the background, which is pretty funny.
Unfortunately, there's not much we can do because if we close the door, they'll meow and try to paw their way through the door.
They will. Yeah, it is what it is. We can't control the cats. So, are you ready to jump into this? Mm-hmm. So last week we left off talking about Rob Endres. So if you haven't heard episode 134 yet, that's the part 1 of this episode basically. So go check it out. But Rob was, I guess, cleared as a suspect based on a gas receipt. But there are people out there who are still suspicious of him and the validity of his alibi. So we're going to talk about that in this episode. But first, let's refresh everyone on Patrice Endres and what the situation was there.
Okay. Patrice was a devoted mother to her son, Pistol, and she was very outgoing and hardworking at her salon, where she had many customers who loved her. According to Pistol and others, she was unhappy with Rob, while he was possessive and wanted her all to himself. Pistol said they regularly argued, and she told him that she wanted a divorce. She had gone missing 600 days before her body was finally found behind a church, 6 miles from her salon.
Yeah. So basically, Pistol and his mom were very close. They had a very tight relationship. She took very good care of him. He was her top priority. Then she got married to Rob, Pistol's stepdad, And at first they got along, but things went sour in their relationship. And Rob became resentful of the relationship that Patrice had with her son. And yeah, so that happened. Pistol, after Patrice disappeared and after she was found, he had a feeling that Rob may have had something to do with it because of these details. He had heard his mom talking about wanting a divorce. He knew how possessive Rob was. A lot of people did. And Pistol just had a feeling that Rob may have had something to do with it.
Well, maybe because of Rob locking Pistol out and never letting him get his things out of the house.
Yes,
That could be
there's
a
a
huge
very huge detail
Yeah.
that for a lot of people, that tells you what kind of person Rob is.
Right.
He was willing to lock a 16-year-old kid out of the house he lived in the day after his mother went missing. But we'll get to that and talk more about it. So we're going to go over some things about Rob and why people still suspect him. The first and most important thing we need to do is to consider the gas receipt, because that is his alibi. This is how he claims that he's innocent. So you want to talk about that, Rosie?
Sure. Rob worked in Conyers, Georgia, which is about an hour drive from their home in Cumming. He said he was on his way to work the second shift at his job, but the second shift is typically a 4 p.m. to midnight shift.
Yeah, at most places. Now, this could vary at different workplaces, but it does seem odd since he was on his way to work when she went missing before noon. Like, why would he have to leave if second shift's at 4? But that's not as odd as this next part.
The gas receipt was from a place in Woodstock. Woodstock is about 42 minutes from Cumming, but from Woodstock to Conyers, where he worked, it's about a 55-minute drive.
So why would he drive 42 minutes one way out of his way to get gas just to be 5 minutes closer to work than he was when he left? Home was an hour away from his work, and he drove basically an hour and a half for no reason when there's plenty of gas stations on the way.
Yeah, that is strange.
Very strange.
But maybe there was like a specific donut at that gas station. Or, like people like different gas stations.
It's interesting
than
you
others.
bring that up.
It is?
Because an actual Atlantean person from Atlanta, because that's where all these suburbs are, all these towns, they commented on this Reddit post that brought this up, saying that's just not something you do in Atlanta because the traffic is so bad.
Oh.
Driving out of your way is going to cost you so much time. There's no way a gas station is so good that he was going to add an extra half hour to 45 minutes to his drive. So I don't know about, I guess if you want to play devil's advocate, you could say that. But another person theorized that maybe if some unsavory person owed Rob a favor, they could have used Rob's card or even just gotten the receipt for him and gave it to him. Because we don't know, if it was a card receipt or a cash receipt or what. So with that said, there's another list of odd things about Rob.
Well, it would have had to be a cash receipt, right? Because if it was a card receipt, they would have been able to read some of the numbers on the card, right?
Yeah, you would think. But the thing about this case is it's still open, so the police haven't released all the
information. Got it.
Exactly. So there might be a lot of things we don't know, but we're going to be speaking based on what we do know, which is what the police have released. This episode of Voice of the Victim podcast is sponsored by Choose Your Struggle podcast. So we want to tell you about this podcast made by Jay Schiffman. He's a public speaker and a coach.
Jay interviews people with lived experience on the topics of mental health, substance misuse and recovery, also drug use and policy to help end stigma and normalize difficult conversations through empathy and vulnerability.
Each year, over 125,000 Americans die from overdose and suicide combined. And this isn't even including other causes of death related to substance misuse and mental health. It's just those two.
These people are our friends, our neighbors, and our family members. They go to our churches, eat next to us at our favorite restaurants. They talk to us through our favorite podcasts. And these deaths are completely preventable.
There are massive systems changes that need to happen. But until we can have honest conversations about these topics, these lives will continue to be lost.
That's why Jay produces the Choose Your Struggle podcast and tells his story. As a guy in long-term recovery who survived 2 suicide attempts and an overdose, he recognizes his privilege.
He believes he's been given a second chance, and that if he didn't use it for something truly meaningful, it would be a waste.
That's why he gets up every day and works to help end the stigma and ensure that those who need help get the help they deserve, because we're all in this together.
So go find Choose Your Struggle podcast anywhere you listen.
Well, a Reddit post also mentioned that Rob appeared to be a textbook sociopath.
And we're obviously not going to say he is a sociopath or try to diagnose him, because we don't know what we're talking about, but they did provide a list of sociopathic behaviors that led them to this conclusion.
Yeah, for example, first, he completely changed his behavior toward Patrice's son after they were married. It was almost like he was putting on an act to get his foot in the door, and then suddenly switched. Second, he locked 16-year-old Pistol out of the house the day after she went missing, like we said before, and refused to give him any of his mother's belongings or even his own belongings.
Yeah, this was one of the biggest red flags to me. Obviously, he has a chip on his shoulder against Pistol. He has no sympathy for this 16-year-old kid who lost his mom. So that kind of is in the camp of possibly a sociopath.
Third, he continues to speak down on his dead wife's parenting style.
Yeah. Can you imagine a grieving husband speaking negatively about his dead wife?
That is really bizarre. Why would you do that? Fourth, instead of speaking about how important she was to him, he speaks about how great their relationship was and how she loved him. He lied about them never fighting, and he smirks while talking about her wanting a divorce.
Possible duper's delight. But he kind of proves by himself that he cared more about people's perception of their relationship than about her and who she was. You know, she wasn't talking about how cool it was that she ran her own business and all her customers loved her. He talked about how she loved him and they were so happy and they never fought.
Yeah, I always think when I see like Instagram pages where it's like the perfect life, how sad their life actually must be.
Right?
Because people who always put on the perfect, display always have the biggest problems.
Very true.
After getting Patrice cremated, he refused to give any of her ashes to Pistol and keeps them close.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that he changed the locks the day after his wife went missing, locking Pistol out for good. In a lot of people's minds, this kind of proves that he knew she wasn't coming back, or shows that he didn't want anyone else in that house.
One of the possibilities, if Rob did do this, is that he had been keeping her in the house, alive or not, and didn't want Pistol around to interfere.
Now, if this was true, he could have gotten someone else to do the dirty work for him. The kidnapping and the murder. Who knows? For all we know, he could be completely innocent,
True.
We don't know 100% either way.
But some other things that were odd is that when her body was found, the wedding ring wasn't there. And it's possible that whoever did this to her stole it.
Very possible. But there's another possibility we didn't mention last week. It's that her body was never there, and that her bones had been placed there later. Again, it's 100% possible the killer took her ring, but although there was cash missing from the register, her purse was still at the crime scene. So it's hard to believe that this crime was motivated by theft. Thieves don't usually leave such an elaborate mystery behind, let alone kill their victim. But if her bones were placed at the spot, the ring wouldn't have been able to be attached anyway. So if Rob was involved, it's possible he either sold the ring or secretly kept it as a trophy.
That's what I was going to say. Trophy. It was the murderer's trophy.
Yeah, it's very possible, especially since there's no record of the house being searched. Who knows what he is hiding? So this case is technically still open, like we mentioned, so we don't have all the evidence, or not all the evidence is public. So we can't see the gas receipt. We can't see the police reports. We don't know for sure if they searched the home. You'd think they would, but there's no mention of it. And we don't know if there was video of Rob getting gas or who got that gas receipt. But we do know that those things are never mentioned. It seems like they only searched around the salon and that river where the fake confession led them. But other than that, you'd think they'd want to mention any evidence that makes them look like they were doing a good job.
Right. Well, continuing with odd things about Rob, he mentioned himself that Patrice didn't have a life insurance policy. This could have been a way to subconsciously make people believe that this was all about the money.
But there's a crazy thing about this. There was a Facebook post from a person who's supposedly married to Rob's son from before Patrice. Now, the only place I could find this was within a video on the Plunder YouTube channel. So I don't know if it's a private post or what, but I do think it's worth considering, just in case it's true. So, Rosie, will you read that?
Sure. It says, "My husband and his dad, aka Rob, have not talked since the funeral. His dad is ex-Special Forces, extremely smart and manipulative, a narcissist, and was very possessive of my husband's mom as well, and lied a couple times on the episode." They're talking about Unsolved Mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, Rob did not meet her in the hair salon. He was bald. He met her at a strip club when Patrice was a dancer. Number 2, he did have a life insurance policy on Patrice, and none of the family got any of it. Rob kept it all. 3, he is basically a trained liar. 4, Patrice's ex, Pistol's father, got out of prison that year, and he and Patrice were best friends. They talked daily, and Rob was a jealous man. 5, at the end of the episode, he says, "Now I have her, and that's a good thing."
So, that's some heavy stuff. Again, I couldn't find this actual post on Facebook. I just saw it in a video. But it's big if true. Now, there are multiple motives here if there was a life insurance policy, money and jealousy. Now, that's really the only new information from this that really stood out to me. It doesn't matter how they met. But if this is a relative, they were identifying multiple times that Rob lied. And that's also important.
Right.
And kind of creepy that he said, "Now I have her, and that's a good thing."
I remember that from the episode. If I remember right, he patted the ashes or wherever the ashes were in, and it was just weird. He was proud of the ashes.
It's really unsettling.
It is.
It's almost like the pride that a serial killer would have getting away with a crime.
Seemed very much like this was what he wanted.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about his weird behavior with her remains when they were found. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Rob asked to see her skeletal remains laid out when they were first found. He asked to spend some time alone with them, and he held them, even kissing her skull.
So who in the world is that comfortable handling skeletal remains that way? Unless it's something they're accustomed to.
I mean, I feel bad because it's it's so strange, but I don't know. If your skeleton was laid out, I don't think I'd kiss it.
No.
I don't
you
think
even
I'd
want to see
touch
it?
I don't think I would want to see it. I'm just trying to think of it through a devil's advocate, I guess. But yeah, you're right. I don't think I would be.
Well, I only bring this up
caressing it.
Right? I only bring this up because a Reddit user who works with remains mentioned that normal people cringe at the sight of skeletal remains. The only people that don't are people who are accustomed to working with them.
I guess it kind of seemed like he was attracted to it.
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, that could be because it's something he accomplished. Who knows? I just can't wrap my mind around it being that comfortable with human remains, even no matter who they are.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Well, Rob said himself on the Unsolved Mysteries episode, I picked up her her head, and carried it around for a while. I put her back and kissed her goodbye. I thanked Mr. Caldwell and I left. He asked me if I was okay to drive. I was. That was the last time I saw Patrice anywhere near intact.
Who talks like that? Anywhere near intact?
Yeah.
Like, it almost implies that he'd seen her before not intact. But maybe I'm reading too far into it. I don't know.
He held her skull and walked around for a while.
That was a quote from him.
Yeah.
But guilty or not, this is creepy as heck to me. And I get that there are people out there who are into weird stuff who would never hurt another person. I know there's a lot of them in the true crime community. But they don't have dead wives with all these weird circumstances surrounding it. So this is kind of a special situation.
Mm-hmm. Rob also revealed in the episode that for a whole year after her death, he slept with her ashes. He said, she was like my little teddy bear. That's how we used to sleep, snuggled together. I just brought back good memories.
I think it's supposed to say it just brought back good memories.
That's so strange to say it brings back good memories to sleep with your dead spouse's ashes.
Mm-hmm. And if he's completely innocent, I really do feel bad for him. Because it seems like he's having a hard time knowing how to deal with this. But if it's true that he's wildly possessive and that he may have done this to her, it's just plain evil looking at this. I can't say enough, though. We don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to see if this investigation picks up again now that the story aired on a Netflix show and it's getting more attention. Because there seem to be a lot of loose ends that need tying up, and a lot of evidence the police apparently have that they aren't sharing if they haven't released any satisfying exculpatory evidence in his favor. Because I can't really see just that stupid receipt that doesn't make sense anyway.
Yeah. I do have to say that I've watched a different show, My Strange Addiction, where the girl, she lost her husband and she had him cremated and she ate his ashes and slept with him.
Yeah, I remember that.
So there are some people who just definitely don't know how to handle it and
true,
unfortunately do stuff like that.
But would she have locked a 16-year-old kid out of his own house?
I don't know. They never touched on that.
It's all these things piled on top of each other that make me so suspicious of this guy.
Oh, I am too. I'm just saying. Another detail is that Rob worked on cars. He may have had access to cars he didn't own during repair work and test drives. That could explain the blue car. But then there was the tall figure with long hair that 2 eyewitnesses independently identified.
Yeah, which leads back to the idea that it was either someone else or Rob hired someone.
Mm-hmm. In the episode, he brought up his degree in criminology when talking about the police wanting to question him, and laughed with an almost bragging demeanor.
And someone pointed out that he never actually says he wants them to find the person that did this to her. He almost seems perfectly content just having her remains and sleeping with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, story's over for him.
Content.
He's good.
I like the way you say that, because it did seem like that. It seemed like he had completed his goal.
Yeah.
And had a prize.
If this was really a mystery to him, what happened, he would not be able to rest until he knew who did this to his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Pistol. Pistol's miserable.
But here's something that was weird. In the show, after he says that, they show him having to dig her ashes out from the bottom of a closet.
So if he had respect for her, wouldn't he have them in a nice container on a shelf? Not in what looked like a shoebox at the bottom of his closet?
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like what he's saying and what he's doing are completely different. Like, if he did it, he could have been having a moment of shame and hid them under this pile. You know, who knows? But everyone has their own ways of coping, so...
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he's innocent, there's just a lot of weird things.
Another thing is that Rob possibly had connections within law enforcement that led to a cover-up. He was ex-Special Forces. There's no record of them searching the house.
So in any other case I've seen, the house is immediately searched when a spouse goes missing. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah.
Add on top of that the suspicious activity of changing the locks the day after. No one gets away with that kind of crap. This guy locked a 16-year-old child out of his own home. And social services wasn't called. How did that happen? So many things that this guy got away with that no one else would. Again, it's possible they searched the house, but there's no record of it. And if they want to look like they're doing good police work, they would at least publish that information.
Well, here's another little tidbit to throw on the pile. Rob also speculated that Patrice could have been someone's toy before being murdered.
How do you feel when you hear that, Rosie?
It makes me cringe. It's super uncomfortable.
Like almost like, why would he say that?
Yeah, like why would you assume and say that on TV?
Yeah, it almost makes me feel like he has an idea of what actually did happen to her. It could explain the locks, keeping not only Pistol, but all of Patrice's family out of the house.
Right. In response to people's suspicions that he murdered her, instead of being torn apart about her death and hurt that anyone could even accuse him of it, he smirks and readily explains his odd, out-of-the-way alibi. He also mentioned that someone would have to use a wheelbarrow to move her body to that part of the woods.
Well, how would he know that? And after he said this, he got really quiet as if he said too much. Then people pointed out how the corner of his mouth came up a bit at this moment, subtly hinting at a duping smile. Now, if you study body language, you know about that. It's duper's delight when you're getting away with something, basically, that you're hiding. So people notice that it could mean something. Now, let's go over a couple different theories. The first is that Rob paid someone to get gas and bring him the receipt, or possibly even that he found the receipt in a trash can. Now, this could be why it's so out of the way, because if you're checking trash cans and that's all you can find, you got to roll with it.
Along with this theory, people say he abducted his wife, staged the salon to look like a robbery, then murdered her, either in the car or in the home, and changed the locks afterwards.
But the problem with this theory is, how do you explain the person with the long hair?
A wig?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, interesting. But let's say he wasn't wearing a wig, because he doesn't exactly have like a female physique, and someone identified the person as possibly a woman. So there's another chance that he hired someone, they did this whole thing, and the money in the register was like the reward. Like, you can take all the money in the register if you do this, and I won't come after you. That's the thing. Wouldn't Rob want to get that money back if it was stolen?
Yeah.
At the very least. I don't know.
Another theory is that he hired someone to abduct her while he got the gas and punched his card at work. They could have delivered her to the home alive or dead. Then he may have used her as a toy, like he mentioned about the killer himself. Then took her out in a wheelbarrow to dump her.
Or, based on how comfortable he was with the bones, maybe he waited until that was all that was left, and then disposed of her in the woods behind the church. And there is some science to back that up, which we'll talk about in very quickly.
Okay.
But while we're still talking about theories, it's possible she was lured out of the salon by someone telling her there was an emergency with Pistol or something. But that's just a theory, and I don't know why her car would be moved with her out of it if that was true. You'd think she'd get in her car and leave right away.
Yeah.
One thing that kind of makes me think Rob had something to do with this, though, is that Patrice was acting very odd that whole morning. People noticed that she was off.
Right.
She wasn't acting herself. So if it was a surprise kidnapping and robbery, she would have been acting normal, don't you think?
Yeah, and she wouldn't have asked Pistol what would he do if she ever left.
Disappeared.
Yeah.
If she was ever gone. But it's almost like she had been threatened earlier that day, the way she was acting.
Right.
Which, who knows where her and Rob's relationship were this day.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually some scientific backing to the idea that her bones were placed in the woods after that was all that was left of her. And it's very scientifically plausible.
The bones were all found relatively close to each other. If they would have been left over from her body actually being there, they would have been scattered and moved around by scavenging animals. But if they were placed there once the flesh was all gone, then animals would have no interest in them.
That's a pretty big deal. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah, it really
and
does.
It's really sad and scary, but it kind of seems like her bones were placed there after they were decomposed. So I don't know what happened to Patrice, but based on the evidence, I would guess that she was about to heat up her lunch when someone in a blue car with long hair showed up and asked for a jump under a guise. And once she moved her car and they lured her out of the car, under the guise that she was going to help them hook up the cables, they subdued her, possibly knocked her out or tied her up in the back seat, then went inside and took the cash. And then what happened after that is too murky to say. But if Rob did have something to do with it, I definitely think it involved hiring someone else based on what the witnesses said.
Right.
And so what about the official investigators' stance on this?
Well, according to investigators, they thoroughly investigated Rob, creating a timeline of his day. They acknowledge that while it doesn't eliminate him from being involved, it greatly reduces the chances that he could have done it. Also, they couldn't rule out a murder for hire scenario.
So basically, they officially admit that his alibi isn't enough to clear him completely. But to play devil's advocate, or whatever, depending what side of the fence you're on, I am also curious about this Paul Cantor fella. If you don't remember from last week, he was the last one to officially see Patrice alive after getting a haircut. Now, his only alibi is that he got a phone call around the time he left, and I couldn't find any details about exactly how that qualified as an alibi or, what the details surrounding the phone call that said for certain that he left when he got that call.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine that the last known person to see you alive would be very heavily investigated. And as much as I don't want to say this, it really seems like this investigation was lazy. I want to be on the side of the people that work hard to solve these crimes, but unless they're sitting on some huge information that's not public, this investigation is kind of pathetic.
Yeah.
There was no search of the home to be seen, no investigation into the last man to see her alive, and it's sad that Patrice lost her life on what seems to be an absolutely horrifying and traumatic way, and no one knows 100% what happened. And that's a tragedy that Patrice lost her life and has gotten no justice.
Mm-hmm.
And like we talked about earlier, for Rob, just having her remains seemed to be his happy ending. He's content just having her to himself. But what about her son? Pistol has no real closure. And finding out that your mom's dead after she's been missing for 1.5 years is not closure. It must be so frustrating for him to have to live with this.
Yeah. Pistol is a real victim in this situation.
Yeah, he is. Especially when now he's older, so you see him as a man.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to remember that he was 16 years old when this happened.
And had a really close connection with his mom.
Yeah. And this man that should have been the person to take care of him after all this happened just completely abandoned him. Anyway, that's it for this story. That's all we got to say. And I'm sure there's a lot of other theories out there that we didn't cover, because this is one of those cases, it's a mystery, so there's thousands of theories out there. So many people are out there, coming up with ideas. So if you want to see more theories, just go on Reddit and look this up. There's so much. But that's all we're going to talk about. So what do you think, Rosie?
I think he did it, personally. If you watch the episode and you see his mannerisms and the way he talks, I think then you can really make up your mind on whether he did it or not.
Yeah.
It's the not talking and seeing what your body does, body language.
Yeah.
Really, really does talk.
I wonder if Derek Van Schaik has made a video about this.
Yeah.
He's the body language expert that I watch on YouTube a lot, but I would really like to see his take on this. But yeah, and I think what you recommended is perfect. People need to make up their minds for themselves because there is no 100% answer out there right now. But yeah, take in all the evidence you can find and make up your own mind. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
And I'd say personally, I have to agree with you. He looks real sketchy, real creepy. Again, just being creepy doesn't mean you did this, but there's so many things stacked on top of each other that are creepy. It's enough to make anyone wonder. He definitely had the means. He had the motive, according to Pistol. So, yeah, that's all we can say. All right. Well, Rosie, let's wrap it up.
All right.
And if this is your first time here, you can find us on Instagram at VOV Podcast and email us at vovpodcast@gmail.com. We just got on TikTok recently. So go find us on TikTok if you're over there. At first, when I heard about TikTok, I was like, that's stupid. But
That's where I'm at still.
I actually really enjoy it because there's a lot of good, funny meme channels over there. And most importantly, Sarah Turney is over there. Remember Sarah Turney from when we talked about her sister, Alyssa, in episodes, I think, 67 through 69? And she's on TikTok, and she's been making a huge impact over there on her sister's case. And I'm pretty sure her being on TikTok is what got her father to be arrested and investigated.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, yeah, TikTok's not just for kids dancing anymore. People are learning new ways to use it every day. So it's very fascinating. Anyway, that's all I have to say today. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Bye.